When the iron heart breaks, a Western cowboy tale. Have you ever wondered what it takes to rebuild a life from complete devastation? When Clara Hart stepped off that train in Montana, she carried secrets that could destroy her. A hidden past as a Civil War nurse at just 14 disguised as a boy, and the haunting fear that she'd inherited her mother's madness. This is the story of how a woman running from her past found love with a man haunted by his own demons. If you're ready for a tale of courage, redemption, and the kind of love that's forged in fire, hit that like button and subscribe to follow Clara's journey through the untamed West, where second chances come armed and dangerous. The nightmare always began the same way. Blood on her hands, too much blood, and the boy soldier's eyes staring up at her, green like spring grass, wide with the terrible knowledge that she couldn't save him. In the dream, she was 14 again, her chest bound flat beneath the Union uniform. Her voice pitched low as she barked orders to the other medics. More pressure on that artery. But the blood kept coming and the boy kept dying. And somewhere in the smoke and screams, her mother's voice whispered, "The madness runs in our blood, Clara. You can't escape what you are." The train's violent lurch jolted Clara Hart awake, her traveling dress soaked with sweat despite the September chill. Through the window, Montana stretched endless and unforgiving, a landscape that promised either rebirth or burial. After 43 days of running, she'd take either. Silver Bluff Station. The conductor's call rang like a judgment bell. Clara pressed her gloved hand to the window, watching the platform materialize through the locomotive's steam. Rough planks, a water tower, and beyond that sky so vast, it made her chest ache with something between terror and hope. In her traveling case lay Edmund Denton's letters, careful lies wrapped in promises of respectability. A dry goods merchant widowed seeking a mail-order bride. At 26, with her father dead and her mother's madness, her only inheritance, what choice did she have? The porter set her trunk on the platform with a finality that echoed in her bones. Clara smoothed her navy dress, her best saved for this moment of supposed triumph, and stepped into her new life, or what was left of it. Miss Hart. The voice was thin, reedy, attached to a man who looked like he'd been assembled from spare parts. Narrow shoulders, soft hands, eyes that couldn't quite meet hers. Edmund Denton had aged badly since his photograph, or perhaps dishonesty had its own particular way of carving itself into a face. "Mr. Denton," she offered her hand, noting how he barely touched her fingers before dropping them like they burned. "There's been a change in circumstances." The platform tilted. Or maybe that was just her world tilting off its axis again. "I don't understand. My situation has altered." He pulled out a leather pouch coin, singing their 30 pieces song. "I've remarried 2 months ago, but I didn't want to leave you stranded, so I waited to tell you in person for your troubles. The return train leaves tomorrow morning." The crowd that had gathered to witness the mail-order bride's arrival pressed closer, their whispers sharp as surgical knives. "Sent back. Poor thing. Should have known better." Clara's spine straightened of its own accord, muscle memory from standing at attention, while generals inspected the medical corps, never suspecting the beardless boy before them had breast bound flat beneath his uniform. "Keep your money, Mr. Denton." Her voice carried the same authority she'd used to command grown men to hold down screaming soldiers. "Compensation isn't the same as honor." "Maybe not." The new voice came from behind her, low and steady as bedrock. "But leaving a woman stranded reflects on all of us." Clara turned to find a man who looked like he'd been carved from the landscape itself. Broad shoulders that blocked the sun, hands scarred from honest work, eyes the color of winter sky that held shadows she recognized, the kind that came from watching people you loved die while you stood helpless. Wade Carver. Even in Boston she'd heard that name. Owned the largest ranch in 3 counties, built an empire from nothing but will and Wyoming dirt. Edmund's face flushed purple. "This isn't your concern, Carver. You made it everyone's concern when you brought her here under false pretenses." Wade's voice carried no heat, just fact, the way she'd once stated, "The bone is shattered," or gangrene has set in. A commotion erupted near the freight depot. Horses reared as a wagon lurched sideways, its wheel catching in a platform gap. Barrels tumbled like dominoes, one rolling straight toward Clara with the momentum of a cannonball. Time slowed the way it had during artillery bombardments, every detail crystal clear, death approaching at its own leisurely pace. She froze, not from fear, but from memory. Another barrel, another time filled with medical supplies she'd tried to save while Confederate shells rained down. She'd saved the supplies but lost the patient. Strong hands grabbed her waist, lifting and spinning her clear. The barrel crashed into the bench where she'd stood, wood exploding into kindling. Clara found herself pressed against Wade Carver's chest, his arms steel around her waist, her hands clutching his coat. He smelled of leather and wind and something indefinably safe, not the copper stink of blood or the sweet rot of gangrene. "You hurt." His breath stirred her hair. "No." The word came out steadier than her knees felt. "No." He set her down gentle as handling china, but didn't immediately let go. His eyes searched hers not the way men usually looked at women, measuring beauty or calculating worth. He looked at her like he was reading a map to somewhere important. "Thank you," she managed, stepping back before he could feel her heart hammering its retreat against her ribs. He touched his hat brim. "Ma'am." The crowd pressed closer now, to excitement over near catastrophe, mixing with the scandal of a rejected bride. Edmund had vanished like smoke in a battlefield wind. "Miss Hart," Wade's voice cut through the chatter. "You have plans." "I'll manage." The lie came automatic as breathing. "The Riverside takes lodgers, clean place." He paused and she saw him make some internal calculation, the kind she'd made when deciding whether to amputate or try to save a limb. "I'm looking for a housekeeper. Temporary position, 3 months through winter. Room board, fair wages. End of term, you choose. Stay on, or I'll buy your passage anywhere you want to go, first class." The offer hung between them like a rope bridge over a canyon. Behind her lay humiliation and a return to Boston where certain people might be looking for her. Ahead, who knew? But his eyes held no improper speculation, just a straight business proposition from a man who'd literally pulled her from harm's way. "Your wife wouldn't object." Something flickered across his face. Pain quick and sharp as a scalpel cut. "No wife, just me, my foreman, and 15 hands. Big house." He paused, swallowed something down. "Big house going to waste." The crowd leaned in, sensing drama's next act. Clara thought of the soldier boys she'd saved, and the ones she hadn't, of her mother's gentle slide into madness, of her father's body on their parlor floor, with a bullet hole where his brilliance used to be. She thought of the men in dark coats who'd come asking questions, and how she'd burned her nurse's uniform, along with the names she'd used during the war. "I accept your offer, Mr. Carver. 3 months is agreed." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe? Or respect. "Wade, just wait out here." He picked up her trunk like it weighed nothing. "Wagons this way." The crowd parted, their whispers following like tumbleweeds. Clara kept her chin high, her stride steady. Let them talk. She'd faced Confederate cavalry charges dressed as a boy. She'd held men's intestines in while she sewed them back together. She'd watched her mother paint the walls and with her own blood, singing hymns the whole time. Gossip was just noise. The wagon sat sturdy and plain, built for work, not show. Wade set her trunk in back, then offered his hand to help her up. His palm was calloused as tree bark, strong enough to crush but gentle in its grip. The kind of hands that could hold a dying calf or a loaded gun with equal competence. "Ranch is 2 hours north," he said, settling beside her. "Road's rough in places." "I'm not made of glass." The ghost of a smile touched his mouth, and she caught a glimpse of who he might have been before whatever had carved those shadows under his eyes. "No, I don't believe you are." He clicked to the horses and the wagon rolled forward. Clara didn't look back at the station, at Edmund's store, at the pointing fingers and wagging tongues. The road stretched ahead, rutted and uncertain, leading toward mountains that scraped the sky with granite fingers. "Why?" she asked when the town shrank to miniature behind them. He knew what she meant. Man who can't honor his word in small things can't be trusted in large ones. He glanced at her sideways. "Besides, takes courage to step off that train knowing what waited. Takes more to stand straight when it went sideways." Courage or desperation? Both work out here. They rode in companionable silence while Clara found herself studying him sidelong. The way his hands held the reins, firm but not tight, like holding something that might spook. The patient set of his shoulders that spoke of carrying heavy loads for so long, the weight had become part of his skeleton. There were silver threads in his dark hair, though he couldn't be more than 35. Whatever burden he carried had aged him in ways that had nothing to do with years. "Tell me about the ranch," she said, needing to fill the silence before it could ask questions. Triple C, Carver Cattle Company, 8,000 acres, 2,000 head. Run it clean, treat the men fair. He navigated around a pothole deep enough to swallow a calf. House needs work. Been just men too long, but it's solid. Stone foundation, good roof. You'll have your own room lock on the door. Meals with the hands, or in the kitchen, your choice. The propriety of it eased another knot in her chest. And my duties: keep house, manage meals. The men cook breakfast and supper for themselves in the bunkhouse, but lunch is at the main house. Laundry once a week, he paused. Ranch accounts, if you've got the schooling for it. My foreman Silas handles them now, but his eyes aren't what they were. I kept books for a millinery shop in Boston. Another was smooth as silk. She'd kept books for the field hospital, tracking medical supplies and casualties with equal precision. I can manage accounts. Good. Fair warning. The men are rough-mannered but respectful. Anyone gives you trouble, you tell me or Silas straight off. She believed him. Something in his tone suggested troublemakers would deeply regret their choices. She'd seen that kind of quiet authority before in battlefield surgeons who could silence a room with a look. The sun climbed higher, warming her face. Her traveling dress felt heavy and practical for this place, but she'd adapted to worse. She'd learned to move like a man, talk like a man, even piss standing up with the help of a special device. She could learn to be a housekeeper. There, Wade pointed ahead. Triple C land starts at that ridge. Clara saw fence posts marching toward the horizon wire strung taut between them. Beyond that, the land rolled in waves of grass dotted with cattle like black boats on a golden sea. In the distance, buildings clustered, house barn and outbuildings arranged with tactical precision. It reminded her of field hospitals, everything positioned for maximum efficiency under fire. It's larger than I expected. Started with 160 acres and a dozen cows. Pride colored his voice, not boastful, just fact. Built it piece by piece, every post, every wire, every building. Know them all by feel. They descended toward the ranch buildings and Clara felt the wheel of fortune turning. This morning she'd been a failed mail-order bride. This afternoon, what housekeeper seemed too small a word for what lay ahead. This felt like standing at a crossroads where the old maps ended and new territories began. One more thing, Wade said as the buildings grew larger. I should have asked before, you have any conditions? Things you won't do or can't abide? The question surprised her. When had anyone asked what she needed? I don't abide cruelty, she said finally, to animals or people, and I'll need Sunday mornings for myself. Church if there's one nearby, or just quiet time. Time to remember who she used to be and make peace with who she was becoming. Nearest church is in town, but Reverend Hayes rides circuit once a month, holds services in our main room. His jaw tightened. As for cruelty, man who'd hurt something weaker than himself, and he has no place on my land. They rolled through the ranch gate under an arch made from a massive timber, with Triple C burned deep into the wood. Dogs ran out barking. Horses lifted their heads from the corral. Men emerged from various buildings to see who'd come calling. Wade pulled up at the main house. 2 stories of solid timber and stone-wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. Glass windows that must have cost a fortune to frame in. It looked like it had grown from the earth itself, sturdy and permanent as the mountains beyond. But there was something else. Clara had developed a sense for death during the war. Could smell it in a wound before infection showed, could feel it hovering over certain beds like a patient vulture. This house held ghosts. They pressed against the windows, whispered from the empty spaces, grieved in the too neat arrangement of everything. This was a house where someone had died badly and the living hadn't figured out how to go on without them. Welcome to the Triples, Clara. She climbed down before he could help, needing to meet this new world on her own feet. The men had gathered at respectful distance, curious but not crowding, weathered faces showing cautious interest. She'd seen that look before, soldiers sizing up a new medic, wondering if he'd run when the shooting started. Boys, Wade addressed them, this is Miss Clara Hart. She'll be keeping house through winter. You'll treat her with the same respect you'd show your mothers and sisters. Or you'll answer to me. Clear. A chorus of "Yes, boss" rumbled through the group. Clara noted how they stood, easy but attentive the way good soldiers stood near a commander they trusted. Whatever Wade's shadows, his men would follow him into hell and back. Silas, Wade beckoned to a grizzled man with sharp eyes and steady hands. A man who'd seen his share of battles, Clara diagnosed automatically. The way he held his left shoulder suggested an old wound, probably shrapnel. "This is my foreman. He'll help you settle in." "Ma'am," Silas touched his hat. "Welcome." His voice carried Scottish hills underneath western dust. "Thank you, Silas." Wade lifted her trunk again. "I'll show you your room. Silas, have someone bring up water for washing. Supper's at 6. Inside the house revealed itself slowly. Entry hall with coat hooks and boot rack. Parlor with furniture built for durability over beauty. Kitchen that made Clara's hands itch to set it right. Good bones, but suffering from male neglect. Everything clean in the way men thought was clean, which is to say not clean at all. Wade led her upstairs to a corner room with 2 windows, a bed with actual springs, dresser, washstand, and small writing desk. "Was my sister's room," he said, setting down her trunk. Clara heard the lie in it, smooth and practiced. This wasn't a sister's room. The faint scent of lavender still clung to the curtains. A woman's hairbrush, too fine for ranch life, sat on the dresser. The kind of delicate things a man might buy for a beloved wife, trying to soften the harsh edges of frontier life. On the wall, almost hidden behind the door, hung a small framed photograph. Wade, years younger, no shadows yet, standing beside a pretty woman in a wedding dress. Her hand rested on her stomach in that unconscious way pregnant women had. "It's perfect," Clara said, letting his lie stand. "Everyone had their graves to tend. I'll leave you to settle. Privy's out back, Pump's in the kitchen. Any questions? Just ask." He paused at the door, and she saw him fighting something, words trying to claw their way out. Finally, he just said, "Clara, that took sand today, standing up to Edmund, accepting my offer without knowing me from Adam. Either very brave or very desperate. Both work fine out here." He touched his hat and was gone, boots steady on the stairs. Clara sat on the bed, testing the mattress. Real springs, clean linens, a room of her own with a door that locked. Through one window, she could see the barn and corrals. Through the other, grassland rolled toward mountains that touched the sky. She unpacked slowly, hanging her 3 dresses, setting her few books on the desk. From the bottom of her trunk, she pulled out a small leather case hidden beneath false backing. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, lay her surgical instruments. Scalpels, forceps, suture needles. The tools of her true trade, the ones that had saved lives and failed to save others. She should throw them away, but they were all she had left of the girl who'd believed she could make a difference. At the very bottom of the trunk lay Edmund's letters. She held them for a moment, then dropped them in the chamber pot. Come morning, they'd serve a more useful purpose than they ever had as promises. A knock interrupted her thoughts. A young man stood in the hallway with a bucket of steaming water and clean towels. 19, maybe, all knees and elbows, an eager smile. But his eyes, Clara knew those eyes. She'd seen them in mirrors for years. Mixed blood showed in subtle ways if you knew how to look. The shape of his cheekbones, the particular shade of his skin where it met his hairline. "Ma'am," he said, "Silas sent these up." "Thank you." "Buck, ma'am, Buck Morrison." He couldn't quite meet her eyes, and she wondered if Wade knew. Probably not, or the boy wouldn't be here. Ranch work was integrated by necessity, but family was different. "Thank you, Buck." He brightened like she promised Christmas. "Real glad you're here, ma'am. Gets mighty tired of beans and salt pork." She hid her smile. "I'll see what can be done about that." After he left, Clara poured water into the basin, unwound her traveling hair, and washed the train's soot and platform dust from her face. In the mirror, a woman looked back, not young anymore, not old yet, marked by loss but not broken by it. Her mother's green eyes, but steadier. Her father's stubborn jaw, but softer. The face of someone who'd seen too much, but kept looking anyway. Through the window, she watched Wade talking with his men near the corral. He moved with economy of motion, every gesture deliberate. A man who'd learned not to waste anything, not words, not movement, not hope. She recognized the type. She'd been that type once before the boy with grass-green eyes bled out in her arms, and she realized that sometimes all the skill in the world wasn't enough. The dinner bell rang across the ranch, calling all hands home. Clara smoothed her second-best dress and headed downstairs. Time to begin earning her keep in this wide, wild place where the sky went on forever, and a woman might just find room to breathe, or room to bury her secrets so deep even she might forget them. In the kitchen, she found controlled chaos. Pots bubbling on the stove, bread burning in the oven, and Buck frantically trying to save what looked like it had once been stew. Mrs. Martinez usually cooks, he explained near tears, but her baby's sick, and I said I could manage, and step aside, Clara commanded, the voice coming from somewhere deep from the girl who'd taken charge of a field hospital when the head surgeon was shot. Buck, pull that bread out. It might be salvageable. You, she pointed at another young hand hovering in the doorway, fetch more potatoes from the root cellar. Move. They moved. In 20 minutes, she'd saved the stew, scraped the worst char off the bread, and added enough seasoning to make it all edible. Not her best work, but adequate. The men filed in, took their seats at the long table, and fell on the food like wolves. Polite wolves, but wolves nonetheless. Wade appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with those winter sky eyes. Heard there was some excitement. Just a minor skirmish, Clara said, dishing up a plate for him. No casualties. He took the plate, fingers brushing hers. You've done this before. It wasn't a question, and she didn't answer it. Let him think she meant cooking for large groups. She couldn't tell him about the summer of '64 when she'd fed 40 dying men with nothing but cornmeal and whatever the foraging parties could find. After supper, the men cleared out, leaving her alone in the kitchen with mountains of dishes. She was elbow deep in soapy water when Wade returned, rolling up his sleeves. You don't have to, she started. My mother used to say, man who won't wash dishes won't wash his soul. He picked up a towel, started drying. Besides, you saved supper. Least I can do. They worked in companionable silence, and Clara found herself relaxing for the first time since leaving Boston. There was something soothing about the simple rhythm of wash, rinse, dry. No one was dying. No one was screaming. Just soap and water, and the quiet companionship of a man who knew how to be silent. Buck's a good boy, she said, carefully testing. The best. Wade's voice held genuine affection. Been here 4 years. Works harder than any 2 men. His mother died bringing him here. Asked us to take him in. He dried a plate with careful attention. Some of the men had opinions about it. Those men no longer work here. So he didn't know, or was very good at pretending. Clara filed the information away. Everyone had their secrets. Some just wore theirs closer to the surface. The house, she said, changing direction. It feels empty, he finished. Yes, it does. She waited, but he didn't elaborate. Through the window, she could see lights in the bunkhouse, hear the faint sound of a harmonica. Some loneliness was loud, wailing and gnashing of teeth. But the worst kind was quiet, patient, like Wade's. The kind that had learned to live with it itself, like chronic pain you stopped mentioning because no one could fix it anyway. I should check on the accounts, he said finally. Early start tomorrow. The office is through there if you need anything. After he left, Clara finished the kitchen, then explored the house more thoroughly. The parlor held good furniture, gone shabby with neglect. The dining room table could seat 20, but looked like it hadn't hosted a real meal in years. Everything spoke of a life interrupted, frozen at some moment of loss, like those bodies at Pompeii caught forever in their last living gesture. She found herself at the closed door upstairs. Wade's room, he had said, but her hand on the knob felt warm, like something on the other side had a fever. She pulled back. Some doors weren't meant to be opened. Not yet. In her own room, she sat at the writing desk and pulled out paper and pen. She should write to someone, let them know she was safe. But who? The boarding house in Boston would have rented her room by now. Her few friends would have heard the gossip. Clara Hart running off to be a mail-order bride. How desperate, how shocking. And the other people, the ones who might be looking for her. No, better to stay dead to that world. Instead, she found herself writing in the journal she'd kept since the war, September 15th, 1885, Silver Bluff, Montana Territory. I have landed in a place of ghosts and grass where the sky is too big and the silence too loud. The man who hired me carries death in his eyes. Not the kind that threatens, but the kind that grieves. The boy, Buck, reminds me of Private Morrison from the 54th Massachusetts. Same eyes, same eager spirit, same doom, hovering patient as a prayer. The house wants to tell me its secrets. I can feel them pressing against the walls like water against a dam. But I have my own secrets to keep, my own graves to tend. Perhaps that makes us even. I thought I was running towards something, marriage, respectability, a new life. Instead, I've run into another battlefield, this one fought with silence and survival instead of bullets and blood. But battlefields are what I know. Maybe that's why fate brought me here, to this haunted house with its haunted owner. Or maybe I'm starting to hear my mother's voices and this is all madness dressed up as Montana. Either way, I'm here now. 3 months, Wade Carver said. 3 months to pretend I'm someone simple, someone who hasn't held men's intestines in her hands, who hasn't seen what people look like when their souls leave their bodies. 3 months. I can pretend that long. Can I? A sound from outside made her look up. Wade stood in the yard below, hat off, face tilted toward the stars. His lips moved. Prayer or conversation with ghosts, she couldn't tell. But she recognized the posture. She'd stood that way herself, asking the darkness why. It took the young ones, the good ones, the ones who had everything to live for, while leaving behind the broken ones who'd gladly trade places. He turned as if sensing her gaze, looked up at her window. For a moment they stood frozen, two damaged people, recognizing something in each other across the darkness. Then he touched his hat brim and moved on, leaving Clara to wonder what exactly she'd gotten herself into. Outside, a coyote howled long and lonely. Another answered from distant hills. The sound raised goosebumps on her arms, primitive as fear, old as the world. But underneath the fear was something else. Recognition. These were creatures that survived by adapting, by taking what the hard land offered and making it enough. Maybe she could learn from them. Maybe 3 months would teach her how to howl at the right moon, how to survive in a place where the horizon never ended and the ghosts never slept. Maybe she thought, as she prepared for bed, that's what Wade Carver was doing too. Surviving one day at a time in a house too big for one man and too small for his grief. The thought followed her into sleep, where she dreamed not of blood and bullets, but of grass and sky, and a man standing under stars asking questions that had no answers, except the obvious one. We go on because the alternative is unthinkable. In the dream, she stood beside him, and together they faced the darkness, two soldiers who'd survived different wars, but recognized the same wounds. When she woke, it was still dark, but she could hear movement downstairs. Wade probably starting his day before the sun thought to rise. She lay still, listening to the house breathe around her, learning its rhythms. Every house had them. The settling sighs, the whispered drafts, the places where footsteps echoed and where they were swallowed. This house was teaching her its language, and she was learning to listen. Because houses, like people, told their stories to those patient enough to hear. And Clara Hart, who'd learned patience in blood and gunpowder, had all the time in the world. 3 months, she reminded herself. But already some treacherous part of her whispered maybe longer, maybe forever. But that was tomorrow's worry. Today she had meals to cook, men to feed, a house to clean, and secrets to keep. Today she had work to do. And work she'd learned was sometimes the only thing that kept the ghost quiet. The morning buck fell from his horse. Clara was in the kitchen, kneading bread, when she heard the scream. Not Buck's, but the horse's, high and terrible, like artillery shells incoming. She ran without thinking, her feet remembering the battlefield sprint, that particular urgency of racing toward disaster. Behind the barn, chaos. Men clustered around a crumpled the young bay mare, dancing nervous stirrups, flapping empty. Buck lay twisted in the dirt, face white as fresh bandages, left arm bent at an angle that made Clara's stomach remember other broken things. Horse spooked at a rattler, Tom explained quickly. Threw him into the fence post. But Clara saw the careful cut in the saddle girth, nearly severed, designed to break at just the right moment. She filed it away, said nothing. First save the life, then ask why someone wanted it ended. Don't move in yet. Her voice came out wrong, not the housekeeper's careful tone, but the battlefield medic's command. Buck, can you hear me? His eyes rolled, found hers. Hurts, ma'am. I know, we're everywhere. She ran her hands over him with practiced efficiency. The muscle memory, 16 years old, but still perfect. Arm broken clean below the elbow. Good. Ribs cracked on the left side, manageable. Head wound bleeding fierce, but not deep. The way he breathed worried her more. Shallow pain shock setting in. Where's the doctor? Though she already knew the answer. Doc Morrison's 20 miles out, Silas said. Won't be back till tomorrow, maybe day after. Morrison, Buck Morrison. The name coincidence she'd noticed before suddenly seemed less coincidental. I need hot water, clean cloth whiskey, she ordered. 2 straight boards for splints. Rope. Now, the men scattered to obey, and she found herself alone with Buck for a moment. His eyes were frightened young, so young, like the bears in blue and gray who'd died calling for their mothers. You're going to be fine, she lied the same lie she'd told 100 times. Sometimes it came true. Wade appeared at a run, took in the scene with one sweep of those winter eyes. How bad? Manageable if we're careful. She met his gaze. But someone needs to check y'all the saddles. This wasn't an accident. His jaw tightened. You're sure? I've seen enough accidents to know the difference. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Silas check every piece of tack. Tom double the watch tonight. The men brought what she'd asked for. Clara cleaned the head wound, first her hands remembering the motions. Then came the hard part. Buck, I need to set your arm. It's going to hurt like the devil. He nodded, tears leaking. Yes, ma'am. Wade, hold his shoulders. Tom, when I say pull his hands straight and steady. She positioned her hands on either side of the break, feeling for the edges of bone through swollen flesh. Closed her eyes, let her fingers see what her eyes couldn't. There and there. On 3. 1, 2. The click was audible, bone finding bone. Buck screamed, then passed out. A mercy. She splinted the arms, swift and sure, then bound the ribs, careful not to restrict breathing. Let's get him inside, gently. They carried him to one of the empty upstairs rooms. Not the one that had been Wade's wife, she noted. That door stayed closed. She settled Buck on clean sheets, mixed willow bark tea for when he woke. You've done this before. Wade wasn't asking. Clara kept her eyes on Buck's pale face. My father was a doctor. He taught me some things. Half true, her father had been a doctor. But she'd learned her real medicine from a drunk surgeon named McCade, who didn't care that his assistant was a woman as long as she could tie off arteries fast enough. That was more than some things. She finally looked at him. Are you complaining about the quality of care? No. He pulled up a chair, sat down heavy. Just wondering what other surprises you're hiding. You have no idea, she thought. Out loud, she said, everyone has things they don't talk about. Even you. He was quiet long enough that she thought she'd overstepped. Then, her name was Margaret, my wife. She died in this room 7 years ago. Clara's hands stilled on Buck's bandages. I'm sorry. Childbirth. The baby came too early. I was in town negotiating cattle prices. By the time I got back, he stared at his hands. She bled out. Baby lived 3 days. A girl. We'd planned to name her Sarah after my mother. The confession hung between them like a bridge. Neither was sure they wanted to cross. Clara thought of all the women she'd failed to save the babies born blue, and still the mothers who bled rivers while she pressed uselessly on wounds that wouldn't close. It wasn't your fault, she said softly. Wasn't it I brought her here to this hard place, put a baby in her, left her alone when she needed me most? Biology doesn't care about guilt. Sometimes bodies fail. Sometimes babies come early. Sometimes she thought of her mother hanging from the parlor chandelier, singing hymns until the rope cut off her voice. Sometimes death just decides, and all we can do is witness. Buck stirred, moaning. She helped him sip the willow bark tea, checked his temperature. The fever was starting, but not too high yet. He'll need watching tonight, she said. I'll sit with him. No, she settled into the chair. This is my job now. Wade studied her, and she wondered what he saw. A housekeeper with unusual medical skills. A woman with secrets, or just another damaged soul trying to find purchase in this unforgiving landscape. Clara, he said finally, thank you. After he left, she found herself truly alone with Buck for the first time. The boy's breathing was labored but steady. In the lamplight, his features were even more clearly mixed heritage. The particular angle of his cheekbones, the shape of his nose. She'd seen enough of humanity's variety to recognize the signs. Near midnight, Buck woke fever-bright and confused. Papa, he called out. Papa, it hurts. Clara's blood chilled. She glanced at the door, but they were alone. Shh, she soothed. You're safe, Buck. Just fever dreams. He said he'd come for me. Said when I was old enough he'd claim me proper. Tears ran down his face. But he never did. Just sends money to Doc Morrison, pretends I don't exist. The pieces clicked into place. Dr. Morrison, 20 miles away. Buck Morrison. Wade's mysterious payments for a boy whose mother had died bringing him here. Everyone does what they think is best, Clara said carefully. Sometimes that's not the same as what's right. Buck's eyes cleared slightly. You won't tell, will you? If Mr. Wade knew, he'd send me away. He's particular about bloodlines. Is he? Clara thought of Wade's fierce protection of Buck, his insistence that men who had objected to the boy's presence no longer worked here. Maybe Wade was particular about bloodlines in a different way than Buck feared. Your secrets are safe with me, she promised, adding silently, as I hope mine are with you. Buck drifted back to sleep and Clara kept her vigil. Near dawn, Wade appeared with coffee and sandwiches. Thought you might be hungry. Thank you. She accepted the cup, gratefully, warmth seeping into tired bones. He pulled up another chair and they sat in comfortable silence, watching Buck sleep. The fever had broken around 3, the crisis passed. He'd heal clean if infection didn't set in. Someone tried to kill him, Clara said quietly. That girth was cut deliberate. I know. Silas found 2 other saddles tampered with. Someone wants to hurt us through our people. Crowley us, Wade's jaw tightened. Most likely. He's been trying to buy the Triple C for years. I won't sell. Why does he want it so bad? Water rights. The stream that feeds our land controls water for 3 valleys. Whoever owns the Triple C essentially controls the whole region. Clara understood. Water was life out here. Men killed for it, died for it, built empires on it. There's more, Wade said. Things you should know if you're going to be here. She waited patient as she'd learned to be with dying men's confessions. Crowley and I have history. He wanted Margaret first. Courted her back in Denver before I met her. She chose me. His smile was bitter. He's never forgiven either of us for that. When she died, some say he was in town that day, that he paid Doc Morrison to be 20 miles away when she needed him. You think he killed her? I think he made sure help wasn't available when she needed it. Same result, but harder to prove. Clara thought of the cut saddle girth. Yes, that was Crowley's style. Indirect, deniable, cruel. What about your sister? She asked. You said she moved to Denver. Wade's face went very still. I lied. Mary died 5 years ago. Fire at the boarding house where she worked in town. They said it was an accident, lamp knocked over, but she'd just refused Crowley's advances the week before. The room felt colder, suddenly. Clara pulled her shawl tighter. He's killed 2 women you loved. Allegedly. Can't prove any of it. And Sheriff Daniels, good as he is, needs proof to act. So you just live with it, knowing he's out there. Wade's smile was sharp as winter. I'm patient. Crowley will make a mistake eventually. Men like him always do. And when he does, I'll be ready. Buck stirred, whimpering. Clara checked his temperature, adjusted his blankets. The boy would live. This time. I should tell you something, she said, decision made. About my past. Wade leaned back. You don't owe me explanations. Maybe not, but if I'm going to be in danger because of my association with you, you should know who you're protecting. She took a breath, let it out slow. My father was murdered 6 months ago in Boston, shot in our parlor while I was at market. The police said it was robbery, but nothing was taken. You saw who did it. No, but I know why. My father had been treating certain men's wives and daughters. Dangerous men who didn't like that he knew their secrets. About the bruises, the broken bones, the other things. He kept detailed records. One of them decided those records were too dangerous to exist. The records burned with our house, convenient fire, 3 days after his death while I was at his funeral. She met Wade's eyes. I'm not running from a failed engagement, Wade. I'm running from men who might think I know what my father knew. Do you? Some of it. Enough to be dangerous to them if they knew I existed. She touched Buck's forehead, checking for fever. That's why I took Edmund's offer. A new name, new place where Clara Hart, the doctor's daughter, could disappear. But Edmund betrayed you. Or saved me. If I'd married him, my name would be in records. Legal documents. Traceable. She smiled without humor. Your temporary position is actually perfect. No marriage certificate, no legal trail, just a housekeeper who worked a season and moved on. Wade was quiet for a long moment. Then stay. What, after the 3 months? Stay, not as housekeeper, as my wife. Clara's hand stilled. Wade, you barely know me. I know you saved Buck. I know you stood between gunmen and my barn. I know you're running from something that might follow you here, and you still warned me about it instead of keeping silent. He leaned forward. I know you look at this land like you could love it, and I know you don't flinch when I talk about Margaret. That's not enough for marriage. It's more than most have. He stood paced to the window. I'm not talking about love, Clara. I'm talking about partnership, protection. You'd be Clara Carver, ranch wife. Your past stays buried. And I'd have someone who doesn't look at me with pity every time Margaret's name comes up. Before Clara could respond, hoofbeats thundered into the yard. Wade looked out, tensed. Crowley. And through the window, Clara could see to him, Marcus Crowley dressed like a banker, but sitting his horse like a man who'd learned to ride before he could walk. Behind him, 6 men, armed. Stay with Buck, Wade ordered, already moving. But Clara followed him to the landing where she could hear but not be seen. Carver, Crowley's voice was smooth as oil. Heard you had some trouble. Boy hurt bad. Boy's fine, Wade said from the porch. No thanks to whoever cut his saddle. Dangerous thing, accusing without proof. Man could take offense. Man could stop playing games and say what he came for. Fair enough, my offer stands. Triple what the land's worth. You could start over anywhere, maybe California. I hear the climate's good for grieving widowers. Clara's hands clenched. The threat was subtle but clear. My land's not for sale, Crowley. Not now, not ever. Everything's for sale, Carver. Just a matter of finding the right pressure point. A pause. Heard you hired yourself a new housekeeper. Pretty thing from what they say. Be a shame if she had an accident. These roads are so dangerous for women traveling alone. Clara moved before thinking, appearing at the top of the stairs where everyone could see her. Mr. Crowley, she called down, voice sweet as poison. How thoughtful of you to concern yourself with my safety. Though I should mention I don't travel alone. Mr. Carver was kind enough to teach me to shoot. I'm getting quite good at it. Why, just yesterday I hit 3 bottles in a row at 50 yards. She descended the stairs with deliberate grace, noting how Crowley's men shifted nervous. A woman who could shoot changed the mathematics of threat. Miss Hart, Crowley touched his hat. Charmed. Mrs. Hart, she corrected. Widow Hart, actually. My late husband was killed in the war. Union sharpshooter. He taught me everything he knew before he died. The lies came smooth as silk. I find weapons training so useful for a woman alone in the world. Don't you agree? Crowley's eyes narrowed, calculating. A widow who could shoot was one thing. A widow with military training was another. I'm sure your skills serve you well, he said carefully. They do, as do the skills my father taught me. She smiled, bright and false. He was a doctor, you know, taught me all about anatomy. Where to cut to cause the most bleeding. Which bones break easiest. How long a man can survive with various wounds. She tilted her head. Fascinating subject, the human body. So fragile in some ways, so resilient in others. The yard had gone very quiet. Even Wade was staring at her. Well, Crowley said finally, I can see you're in capable hands, Carver, but my offer stands, for now. They rode off in a cloud of dust and unfinished threats. Wade turned to Clara, something unreadable in his eyes. Union sharpshooter. Would you prefer Confederate? I'd prefer the truth. She met his gaze steady. The truth is, I know how to protect myself and those under my care. The truth is, Crowley needed to believe I'm dangerous. The truth is, she paused, weighing words. The truth is, everything I said about anatomy is accurate. Make of that what you will. He studied her for a long moment. That proposal I mentioned, it stands. Even knowing I just lied extensively to the most dangerous man in 3 counties, especially knowing that. His smile was winter sharp. A woman who can lie that well to protect this ranch. That's a woman worth marrying. Clara thought of Buck upstairs, fevered and vulnerable. Of the cut saddle girth that could have killed him. Of Crowley's oiled threats and Wade's patient grief. Ask me again in a month, she said, if we're all still alive. Fair enough. That night she sat up with Buck again, but this time Wade stayed too. They played cards by lamplight, told carefully edited stories of their pasts, and didn't talk about proposals or threats or the fact that war was coming to the Triple C. Buck's fever broke for good near dawn. As the sun painted the mountains gold, Clara found herself standing at the window watching the light creep across the land. Wade stood beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. It's beautiful, she said. It's hard country, unforgiving, takes everything from some folks, gives everything to others. Which are wish by. She thought of her mother swinging from the chandelier, her father dead in their parlor, the boy soldiers who'd bled out in her arms. Then she thought of Buck sleeping peaceful behind them, of the men who'd jumped to obey her medical commands without question of Wade's proposal that offered protection and purpose, if not love. Jury's still out, she said. His hand found hers rough and warm and steady. Then we'd better make sure we influence the verdict. Through the window, riders appeared on the horizon, not Crowley's men. These rode loose and easy the Triple C way. The morning shift coming to check on Buck, to start another day of work and survival and small rebellions against men who would take what others had built. I should start breakfast, Clara said, but didn't move. In a minute, Wade said, and his thumb traced circles on her palm, a promise or a question, or maybe both. They stood there as the sun rose, full two damaged people learning to lean on each other, while above them the Montana sky stretched endless and unforgiving and absolutely beautiful in its terrible freedom. The war was coming. Crowley would strike again. But for this moment in this morning light, they were winning simply by standing together, by refusing to break, by finding in each other something worth fighting for. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was enough, for now. The night before the trial, Clara couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, watching clouds eat the stars one by one, feeling the storm building in her bones the way she'd once felt artillery bombardments coming. The air tasted of copper and consequences. Wade hadn't officially proposed again, but something had shifted between them in the weeks since Buck's accident. Small thing. His hand on her back as she passed, the way he sought her opinion on ranch matters, how he'd started saying we instead of I when talking about the future they might not have after tomorrow. Crowley's trial for attempted arson and conspiracy had the whole county choosing sides. Clara and Martha would testify. So would Buck, his arms still splinted, but his spirit fierce. The cut saddle girths had been kept as evidence, along with sworn statements from the men who'd fought off the midnight raid. A sound from below made her reach for the shotgun she now kept close. But it was just Wade standing in the yard looking up at her window. She pulled on her wrapper and went down. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. Storm's coming. He tilted his face to the wind. Can smell it. The weather or Crowley? Both. They stood together in the darkness, and Clara felt the weight of unspoken things. 3 months she'd been here now. Her agreed term was up. Tomorrow after the trial she could leave if she chose. Take Wade's promised train fare and disappear into another life, another name. Clara, he started, but she pressed her fingers to his lips. Say whatever you're going to say after the trial, when we know what world we're living in. He caught her hand, held it. What if there is no after? There's always an after, it just might not be the one we planned. A horse whinnied from the barn, nervous, sensing the storm. Then another, and another. Wade tensed. That's not weather spooking them. The smell hit them then, coal oil sharp and wrong. Clara's blood turned to ice. They're going to burn the barn. The horses. Not this time. Wade grabbed the bell rope, pulled hard and fast. The bronze voice boomed across the ranch. Men tumbled from the bunkhouse, half-dressed but armed. Martha appeared from her cabin with Silas, both carrying rifles. Circle the barn, Wade shouted. They're here. Shadows scattered from around the building, 5, 10, maybe more. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes like deadly fireflies. Clara dropped behind the water trough, shotgun ready, picking her targets careful. A man with a torch running for the barn door. She fired, watched him spin and fall, the torch rolling, harmless in the dirt. But there were more torches, more men. Too many. The house, Martha screamed. Clara turned to see flames already licking at the kitchen wall. They'd been flanked, distracted by the barn threat, while others circled behind. The beautiful old house, Wade's mother's house, Margaret's house, already beginning to burn. Choose, someone shouted from the darkness. Crowley's voice. Save the house or save the horses. You can't do both. Wade stood frozen for a heartbeat, the impossible choice tearing at him. 30 horses in that barn, his home in flames, his men scattered between two fronts. Clara made the choice for him. I'll take the house. She grabbed Martha's arm. Water buckets now. Tom, Jake with us. She ran for the kitchen pump, already organizing in her mind. Wet blankets on the wall's bucket brigade from the pump. Save what could be saved. Behind her, Wade led the charge to protect the barn, his voice carrying commands through the chaos. The fire had caught the kitchen wall and was climbing toward the second floor. Clara pumped water furious while Martha and the men threw bucket after bucket at the flames. But it was like trying to stop a river with her hands. The old wood was too dry, too eager to burn. Miss Clara. Buck appeared, his good arm carrying a box. The important things, Wade's papers, the photograph albums. No, she grabbed him. Nothing's worth your life. But he was already pushing the box into her arm, turning back toward the house. There's more. My mother's letters. He ran into the burning house before she could stop him. Clara shoved the box at Martha and ran after him into smoke and heat and memory of other fires, other wars. The house was an oven smoke thick as winter wool. She found Buck in Wade's room trying to open a trunk one-handed. Leave it. Can it's got, he coughed, choking. Wade's baby, Sarah's things. He never threw them away. Clara's heart clenched. She grabbed the trunk, dragged it toward the door. The ceiling groaned above them, warning of collapse. They stumbled through smoke, blind following the wall toward where the door should be. A beam crashed down, showering sparks. Buck screamed, his shirt catching fire. Clara beat at the flames with her bare hands, smothering them, her palms blistering. She hauled him bodily toward light, toward air, toward life. They burst from the house as the second floor collapsed, a fountain of sparks shooting toward the stars. Clara and Buck fell to their knees in the dirt, gasping as the house died behind them. But the barn stood. Wade and his men had held the line, driven Crowley's people back. The horses were safe, milling, nervous, but alive in the corral. Wade ran to them, dropped beside Clara. Are you hurt, Buck? Alive, Clara croaked, her throat raw from smoke. We're alive. She looked at the trunk they'd saved, saw Wade's face change when he recognized it. He pulled Buck into a fierce embrace, splinted arm and all. You stupid, brave boy. You could have died. Couldn't let her burn twice, Buck whispered, and Clara understood. Margaret had burned in childbirth and fever. Sarah's things had been all Wade had left. Buck had saved them from a second burning. Pa, Buck said, so quiet only Clara heard. I'm sorry, Pa. Wade went very still. Clara held her breath. How long have you known? Wade asked, just as quiet. Always. Ma told me before she died. Said you'd claim me when you were ready. Oh, son. Wade's voice broke. I was never not ready. I was trying to protect you. From the talk, the judgment, I thought, I know. Buck pressed his face into Wade's shoulder. I know. Silas appeared, hat in hand. They're gone. Crowley and his men scattered to the wind. Sheriffs forming a posse, but in this darkness. He looked at the burning house, the dying flames reflecting in his eyes. I'm sorry, Wade. Wade stood still, holding Buck. It's just a house. We saved what matters. But Clara saw the loss in his eyes. 7 generations of Carver history turning to ash. The bed where his parents had loved, where Margaret had died, where Sarah had lived her 3 brief days. All of it gone. Wade, Sheriff Daniels, rode up, face grim. We caught 2 of them. They're talking. Says Crowley paid them $50 each to burn you out. He looked at the ruins. This changes things. Attempted murder, destroying property. Judge Patterson's issuing arrest warrants tonight. Crowley's probably halfway to Mexico by now, Wade said, bitter. Maybe, but his property's still here. His accounts. The judge is freezing all of it pending trial. Daniels touched his hat to Clara. Ma'am, you all right? She looked at her blistered hands, her singed dress, the soot in Buck's hair. We're alive. That's what counts. After the sheriff left, they stood in a small circle. Wade, Clara, Buck, Martha, Silas, watching the last of the house fall into itself. The ranch hands worked to contain the ruins, making sure no sparks reached the barn or bunkhouse. Where will we sleep? Buck asked. Foreman's cabin's empty, Silas offered. Since I moved in with Martha. It's small, but it's shelter. We'll make do, Wade said. Then to Clara, this isn't what I promised you. A proper house safety. You promised me 3 months' work and train fare if I wanted to leave. She met his eyes through the smoke and darkness. The 3 months are up. Do you have that train fare handy? His face fell. Clara, because I'm not taking it. She stepped closer, her blistered hands finding his. I'm staying, if the offer's still open. Which offer? His voice was rough with sabut and hope. The mom or the marriage, yes. He kissed her then there in the ashes of his past with their adopted son and chosen family watching. It tasted of smoke and tears and promise. When they broke apart, Martha was crying. About damn time. Was language, Silas chided, but he was smiling too. There's something else, Buck said, wincing as he shifted his broken arm. Something I need to tell you all. He looked at Wade. About Ma. About who she really was. Wade's hand found Clara's holding tight. What about her? She wasn't just some Indian woman you helped. She was... Buck swallowed hard. She was Margaret's friend from before. They grew up together in Denver. When Margaret married you, Ma followed them. She worked in town, kept an eye on things. Clara felt Wade tremble beside her. Margaret knew about you and Ma. Not the details, but she knew there'd been someone before her. Maybe during one of your fights. Ma never said exactly. Buck's voice dropped. But Margaret didn't hate it. She wrote Ma letters. I have them. Had them. They were in the house. Buck, Wade's voice was strangled. Are you saying Margaret knew you were mine? I'm saying she suspected. And she wanted Ma to bring me here if anything happened. It's in her last letter written the week before she died. Like she knew something was coming. Martha made a sound quickly muffled. Clara remembered her reaction to Crowley at the trial, the personal rage there. Martha, Clara asked gently. You knew Margaret. She was my cousin, Martha whispered. I came here after she died to watch over things. Make sure Wade was all right. Fell in love with Silas, stayed. She looked at Wade. I'm sorry I never said, but Margaret made me promise to let you grieve in your own way. Wade sank to his knees in the dirt, overwhelmed. Clara knelt beside him, pulled him against her. He shook with silent sobs, while their strange, complicated family closed ranks around them. She knew, he kept saying. She knew and she forgave me. There was nothing to forgive, Clara said fierce. You loved two women. They both loved you. Love isn't something that needs forgiving. Dawn came pale and bitter, revealing the full destruction. The house was gone, just stone foundation and charred beams remaining. But as the sun rose, Clara saw something else. The whole county arriving. Wagons full of lumber, women with food, men ready to build. Heard you had some trouble, Rancher Patterson said, spitting tobacco. Figured you might need help. By noon, they'd cleared the worst of the debris. By afternoon, they were laying new floor joists. The house that rose wouldn't be the same. It couldn't be. But it would be theirs, built by community instead of just family. Edmund Denton arrived near sunset, hat literally in hand. Mr. Carver, Mrs. Hart, I need to tell you something. Spit it out, Wade said, tired beyond patience. I'm Clara's cousin, third cousin technically. Her family sent me to find her after her father died. But when I saw her on that platform standing so tall, despite everything, he looked at Clara. You looked buffed like Aunt Catherine before the madness took her. So strong. I couldn't drag you back to Boston, back to the men who drove your father to work himself to death, who maybe had him killed. Clara stared at him. Mother wasn't mad. Not at first. But Uncle Richard's enemies poisoned her slowly, made her look mad, so no one would believe her if she talked about what she'd seen, what she knew. Edmund pulled out a packet of letters. Your father wrote to my father telling everything. These are copies. The originals are with a lawyer in Denver. Clara's hands shook as she took the letters. Proof, evidence of murder conspiracy, a web of corruption reaching from Boston to Washington. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Because you needed to disappear completely. Needed a new name, new life. Clara Hart, the failed mail-order bride, could vanish. Clara Carver, ranch wife, can't be touched. Not with Wade's influence protecting you. Wade stepped forward. You let her think she was abandoned. humiliated her for her protection. Would she have accepted charity? Would you have taken her in if there wasn't a real need? Edmund met his eyes. I know I'm a coward, but I'm a coward who kept her safe the only way I knew how. Clara looked at the letters, at Edmund's ashamed face, at Wade standing protected beside her. Thank you, she said finally, for the cruelty that was kindness. Edmund left soon after, but not before pressing a bank draft into Clara's hands. Your father's estate. What could be salvaged? It's yours by right. The trial happened 3 days later in the barn, the courthouse being too small for the crowd. Crowley was absent, fled to Mexico as predicted, but tried in absentia, guilty on all counts. His property was seized, his syndicate broken. Some of his men went to prison, others disappeared into the vast western landscape. Martha testified about the night raid, Clara about the cut saddles, Buck about the fire. But the real revelation came from an unexpected source. Doc Morrison, Buck's legal father, who stood and confessed that Crowley had paid him to be absent when Margaret went into labor. He didn't say she'd die, the old man wept. Just said to make sure I wasn't available. Said Carver needed to learn loss. I've carried that guilt 7 years. No more. Wade didn't lunge at him, though Clara saw him consider it. Instead, he stood and said, You'll leave tonight. Never come back. That's your only amnesty. Morrison fled. Buck officially took the Carver name that very day, Judge Patterson overseeing the adoption papers with tears in his eyes. They were married a week later on the platform of the new house frame. Clara wore her mother's wedding dress pulled from the trunk Buck had saved. Wade stood tall in his father's suit, also rescued. Buck was best man, his arm finally out of its sling. Martha was matron of honor. The whole county came bringing gifts, practical and precious. Hammers and nails, chickens and seeds, quilts made by grandmothers, and toys carved by grandfathers for babies yet to come. Do you, Clara Hart, take this man? Reverend Bose asked. With all his ghosts and grief and glory, Clara said, making Wade's breath catch. I do. Do you, Wade Carver, take this woman? With all her secrets and scars and strength. He slipped his mother's ring onto her finger. I absolutely do. They kissed as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky the color of hope and home. That night in the foreman's cabin, that would be home until the house was finished, Wade held her gentle, mindful of her still healing hands. I love you, he said, simple and sure. I should have said it sooner. You said it in every board you laid for our house, every time you stood between me and danger, every time you trusted me with your truth. She kissed him long and deep. I love you too. Have since you caught me falling that first day. They made love careful and tender, two wounded people finding wholeness in each other's arms. Outside, snow began to fall, the first of the season, covering the ashes and earth with equal grace. 5 years later, Clara stood on the porch of the completed house watching her children play in the yard. James 4 with Wade's steady eyes and her stubborn chin. Eliza 2 golden-haired like Margaret, but with Clara's quick laugh. Inside her, another child grew due in spring. Buck rode up from the south pasture, tall and strong, at 24 medical school acceptance letter, still fresh in his pocket. He'd study in Denver, come back trained, proper to be the doctor the county needed. Ma, he called, because that's what he'd called her since the wedding. Patient coming, the Johnson boy broke his leg falling from the loft. Clara moved toward her medical office added onto the house 2 years ago, when it became clear the county needed a healer and she needed to heal. The state had granted her a special license. Not quite doctor, but more than nurse. It was enough. Wade appeared from the barn, caught her around the waist. Save him quick and come back. Sunday dinner won't be the same without you. Everything all right? She asked, because he had that look, the one that meant news. Letter from Denver. The governor's appointing a new territorial judge. He smiled. Judge Clara Carver has a nice ring to it. I'm not a lawyer. You're fair, you're smart, and you've got the respect of everyone in 3 counties. Sometimes that's worth more than a law degree. She kissed him quick. We'll discuss it after I set this bone. In her office, she found not just the Johnson boy, but Edmund of all people standing nervous by the door. His wife held a baby, another child hiding behind her skirts. We're heading to California, he said. Wanted to stop. Say goodbye. And he pulled out a daguerreotype. Thought you should have this. Clara took it, gasped. Her parents young and happy, her mother lucid and lovely, her father proud and whole, herself as a baby safe between them. Where did you find this? Your mother's sister had it. She died last month, left it to me to give to you. Said to tell you the madness wasn't in the blood, it was in the water, the poison. You're safe. Your children are safe. Clara pressed the photograph to her eyes closing against tears. When she opened them, Edmund was already leaving. Thank you, she called after him, for everything, even the hard parts. He touched his hat and was gone, one more ghost laid to rest. That night, after the bone was set and the children were asleep, Clara and Wade sat on their porch watching stars. The house around them was solid, filled with voices and laughter and the good kind of ghosts, memories that blessed instead of haunted. No regrets, Wade asked their old ritual. One, Clara admitted. I never learned that frog's name. James told me 3 times. His laugh rolled across their land, across the cattle and the garden, the medical office, and the school. They'd built the chapel where they'd been married twice now. Once in ashes, once in joy. I love you, Clara Carver, he said. I love you too, Wade Carver. Buck came out textbook in hand. Ma, can you help me with this anatomy chapter? Of course, why? She moved to help her son, her brilliant boy, who'd overcome everything to claim his place in the world. Wade watched them, heads bent together over the medical text, and thought of all the ways a life could go wrong and all the ways love could make it right. The night winds sang through the cottonwoods. The creek murmured eternal, and in the house built from ashes and hope, the Carver family lived there, earned happiness. Some stories end with riding into sunsets. This one ended with sunrise always coming, bringing new days and new chances and new ways to choose each other over and over until choosing became as natural as breathing. And in the barn, 30 horses slept safe. In the house, children dreamed good dreams. And on the porch, 2 people who'd found each other at the worst possible moment discovered that sometimes that's exactly the right moment after all. The end. Thank you for listening to When the Iron Heart Breaks. If this story of courage, healing, and hard-won love touched your heart, please like and subscribe to hear more tales from the American frontier. Remember, sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the courage to step off the platform into an uncertain future. Until next time, keep riding toward your own horizon.